Leinster ended their trophy drought in emphatic fashion at Croke Park on Saturday as Leo Cullen's men bullied the Bulls to prove that they were undoubtedly the best team in the URC this season. On today's episode of the Left Wing podcast, we will assess Leinster's performance in Croke Park and their season as a whole, as well as look ahead to this Friday's game between the Lions and Argentina at the Aviva Stadium. I'm Will Slattery. I'm delighted to be joined on the line by Luke Fitzgerald and in studio by Cian Tracey. Cian, it was only 1,540 days between trophies, so didn't have to wait too long. But yeah, it was an emphatic way to finally get over the line. It's a funny one, when the skies opened early Saturday morning, we knew it would put maybe a slightly different complexion how the game might play out otherwise. And Leinster certainly managed the conditions far better than the Bulls. They were physical in defence, didn't give the Bulls much there when the Bulls had that period on the line, and just generally were clinical, played I think better in every facet. The Bulls didn't turn up, but Leinster, we always lamented their inability to maybe come to a final with their best stuff. Conditions obviously didn't allow them to maybe be free-flowing, but I certainly thought they were very, very kind of dialed in and, they put the game out of sight very early as well.
Yeah, I like your phrase, bullied the Bulls, because that's exactly what they did. And I was writing in the match report at the time that they actually beat the Bulls at their own game, which I thought was probably the most impressive aspect of it. Because going into the game, if you had said that Leinster would dominate them physically, they'd dominate them at the scrum, they dominate them in the air. All the areas that we had pointed to that are the Bulls' super strengths, Leinster would have taken that in a heartbeat. And while they were excellent, like really, really good, I don't think they had to be at their best, but that's not Leinster's problem. You mentioned the rain coming down. Will, they also lost James at Gibson Park, which on paper was a massive loss, but I thought Luke McGrath was exceptional.
I knew he was going to play well. I don't want to be like I predicted it, but when I saw that Gibson Park was out, a lot of people I saw tweeting were alarmist. I think McGrath quietly had a good season, and I even though box kicking isn't his strength traditionally, I had a feeling he was going to turn up. And
when it was announced as well, I was sort of thinking back to the La Rochelle game, which was in the rain. Remember how good Luke McGrath was when he came off the bench there. So I was thinking if it had become a real tight kind of scrap, Luke McGrath's defence is outstanding. Now, he did come up with a few big tackles, particularly in that, was it 18 phases for half time. He was really prominent there as well. But I thought he helped Sam Prendergast a lot as well. And when you're able to call on a guy with that much experience who hasn't played a whole pile, particularly in the big games, but just to slot seamlessly in there, I thought was a real mark of Luke McGrath as a player as well. So that was super impressive. I just thought the start that Leinster made, I kind of picked out three moments in the opening 9 minutes that for me summed up the difference between the two teams on the day. The first one is an obvious one, winning that scrum penalty after a couple of minutes by driving the Bulls off the ball, really set the tone for what was to come at the scrum. I thought Sam Prendergast's tackle on Marco van Staden on 9 minutes off a scrum, I was off a line out, the Bulls' first attacking line out, which was a clear marker from them trying to get after him. He made a really solid, strong tackle, and Jack Conan comes in and drives him backwards. That was a big marker for me as well. And then the third one was about a minute later when one of the Bulls players tried to leave a bit on Sam Prendergast afterwards, and you had Joe McCarthy and Thomas Clarkson, two of the younger players, we'll say, but coming in and driving him, Harold Voster, off the ball. It was a real, we're not going to take a backward step here. So I thought those three moments in the opening 9 minutes summed up to me what was a really dominant physical Leinster performance.
Yeah, obviously, the three tries early doors, Jack Conan going over after the Tommy O'Brien clear out, Jordie Barrett hacking forward and getting the try and then running free off the maul.
Hacking is harsh. It's beautiful. It was a lovely little volley, no?
I suppose it was a volley.
I went through it. I was committed to it.
Yeah, he let fly.
It was that if Willie LaRue hadn't dived out of the way, he was getting a serious kick. So
it would have been like Paul O'Connell on Dave Carney back in the day. Remember that when that loose ball was bouncing?
There to be kicked.
So it was, that made it 19-0 after about 19 minutes, and in those conditions, I know Leinster against La Rochelle in a previous final let a 17 lead slip, but never felt like that was going to be the case on Saturday. Luke, what impressed you most about how Leinster got the job done?
Yeah, I get Cian's points. I think it was important to start the game well, but I think when it got a little bit edgy, at the key moments, they kind of stood up. So for me, what really stood out was the defensive effort just before half time. Now, I think they rode their luck a little bit with the referee, but that was kind of a key moment for me, was that they were able to kind of hold them out there for the most part. put up a bit of a stand. Whereas if you think about the La Rochelle one a couple of years ago, they let in a really soft try. I don't know whether it was Dante or I'm not sure who it was in the Aviva that went in under the sticks with like a really soft try. And it felt like they could kind of do it because they were miles ahead there, but they were in a similar situation here and they didn't do that. So the detail was there. I thought when the Bulls got a few decisions at scrum time, I thought they actually reacted really well to that. I thought Slimani made a difference. No, I thought they stood up really well in that facet as well. Because if that starts going wrong for you in the rain, there's always going to be knock-ons and things. That could have actually, if the Bulls got a foothold in the scrum, I think they might have had a few more opportunities. Now, I didn't think it was their day anyway. They kind of couldn't get anything right, really. There was lots of kind of unforced errors, etc. But that was an area where they could have got confidence, and Leinster kind of snuffed them out there, I thought. And that was excellent. I think the kicking game throughout was excellent. That really kind of kept the pressure on, kept them in kind of good positional, kind of from a territory perspective, they were positionally, on top for most of the game, I think, or it felt that way, certainly. Look, I think the weather conditions, so I was concerned about set piece, that stood up really well, but I think that if it really helps that defense, doesn't it? Because I think if it's better conditions, that's when you're maybe a little bit more concerned about the opposition kind of taking you on out there and putting you in positions where you've got to make some decisions when you're really coming hard off the line, which is difficult to do. But they never gave them any time there. And look, Gary Ringrose had a big part to play in that. Other standouts for me, I thought Conan was unbelievable, lads. I thought Baird was brilliant, like really, really great. But for me, best player on the pitch was Jack Conan. Thought he was outstanding all game. So strong. Took ball on positions where, and got like that extra yard or two that you don't normally get. I thought he was brilliant. I really, really was impressed with him. Cian always excellent, but I think James Ryan, lads, makes a massive, massive difference to this team quietly. I think just nice and quietly makes a massive difference to Leinster. I just don't see them. I think they win so many more big games when he's playing or he's on the pitch. That was it. I mean, like, obviously, look, I thought Prendergast was good too. I was pleased for him. I think he still has a bit of a journey to go on, which is stating the obvious, but that's a nice way for him to kind of finish out the season. I mean, the kicking was shaky, but the team kind of rallied around him, and it didn't really become an issue because they played so well. So, jumble of thoughts. Really positive, really pleased for them. I think they needed that. It's a monkey off the back. You could kind of tell that there wasn't there wasn't any crazy celebrations. It looked like they had great fun in the change room afterwards, which has been a long time coming. It's great to see a team that's, had so many disappointments actually be able to enjoy them. But you could kind of see it on the pitch afterwards. Like, there wasn't crazy. Like, I think if they win a Heighton Cup, they go crazy in the pitch. But there was fairly, not muted, but it was just nice and calm. I think it was pleased, and relief was probably the overriding kind of emotion, I think, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah, they were entitled to celebrate. Like, as much as the Champions Cup is the one they wanted and the one that we probably all focus on more, like, as we've always said, once the South African teams came in, it has made this tournament much more difficult to win. They went up against a Bulls team that were definitely the second best team in the league all season and beat them out the gate. So I think they were entitled to celebrate. I was delighted to see them go up the steps of the Hogan stand for this photo op. I was wondering if they would do it. I was hoping Conan
I couldn't believe Aguina Ushla didn't come out.
I was like, what a better way. At a time where people are talking about, are Leinster disliked? What a better way to curry favour with the national population and for Conan to give some sort of speech there. I thought that might.
He said he actually he had a couple of fuckle, but someone was saying his Gaelget might not have been strong enough. But he was ready, and I think just on Conan, I think he's been a brilliant captain for Leinster over the last few weeks, which is.
But considering he was the man with the armband at the end of the Northampton game, and he's bounced back very well, I think, over the last couple of weeks. I think he has seemed like a calm experience.
He's a good figurehead. If just to put on the media hat for a second, he speaks so well with us, and I think he's really coherent. There's no bull with him. He really cuts to the chase. I'd imagine that's what he's like behind the scenes as well, and I think he's a really good spokesperson for this squad for sure.
Yeah, I actually appreciate it. We discussed the comments on this podcast, but he kind of gave an insight into his thinking and the team's thinking at the end of the Northampton game, which I really appreciated, because I feel like oftentimes, they come out with kind of corporate speak.
Oh, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, or they, exactly. I felt at least he was honest enough to give us all an insight, which we don't often get. I think people appreciated that, even though they might not have agreed or might have been slightly alarmed by some of the panic that we saw. But I think that people did appreciate it, and I think now the way the Lions squad has been picked, he's the only real candidate for number 8. Like Henry Pollock will probably play there this Friday, I'd say, against Argentina. He played there in the Champions Cup final, but I think he's more of a 7.
Earl?
Yeah, he plays number 8 too, but I feel like Conan's an out-and-out 8, whereas like Ben...
yeah, I thought you were talking about maybe this...
No, sorry, like... Ben Earl plays, like Tom Willis was starting for Saracens at number 8 this year, and Earl was a 7. Like, and he is a good ball carrier, but Conan is an 8.
Yeah, I think Conan is, fitness permitting, absolutely nailed on to be the Lions, starting test, which is remarkable, really, when you think that he was the Lions' starting test 8 on the previous tour, and since he's come back, obviously Caelan Doris is ahead of him, and Jack Conan has played a bit of 6, so he could conceivably play 6 Lions tests in a row at number 8 and still be coming back and being the second choice number 8 in Leinster and Ireland. It's a strange sort of dynamic.
Yeah, that's funny. Do you know what's interesting? Did you guys know? Maybe you did, but I saw Drico talking about Jack Conan. Did you guys know he had a virus for a while? That he was kind of under the weather with something? Was that kind of a bit of a reveal? Yeah, I didn't know about that.
He came out a couple of years ago and he spoke about that again. Like, really honestly, it's not something that he could have kept that to himself. And I think the story was that he himself and his doctors were really struggling to get to the bottom of what it was. He was lacking energy. I think it was around the time of COVID and they thought it might have been a bit of that, but it was some sort of underlying condition. So that kind of held him back for a while as well. But since he's been fit, and I think, to be fair, the three of us on this pod have been saying it for a long time, that when he's fit, he makes such a big difference. Yeah,
no, to be fair, we have always thought, I think, collectively as a left-wing hive mind, that he ought to have gotten a few more opportunities in the last couple of years in starting some big games. Like, he didn't start against Northampton, for instance. Case in point is in...
But he was key to Ireland this year. If you think about it, so Ireland had a disappointing Six Nations, but if you think about probably maybe Scotland, but I would have felt like the best moment against probably the team that we're kind of most closely matched with at the moment in the tournament. Maybe you could make an argument for France, but I think they might be a little bit better than us at the moment. But the one against England, second half, I mean, God, he was the key guy in that moment where we kind of blew them away. Like, he seemed to come on the pitch, makes the big break, but he was kind of really good in all the moments that he's had. And we've a big topic of discussion is obviously, that we seem to always have is, God, like, how can we get Conan in this team? Like, and it just doesn't, for whatever reason, it just doesn't seem to work with Doris, or it certainly doesn't work as well. And that's the other pleasing aspect, which I think naturally brings us into that place where I'd love to get you guys' opinion on. Baird was so good. He was so physical, and I didn't think he overcomplicated anything. Didn't try and get too jazzy, doing anything kind of silly. Just really, really played to his strengths. That physicality, like, he really, you could see him putting the hits on in the semi-final as well. And he was kind of G'd up. He was a bit of an energizer bunny, I thought, for the rest of the team. Now, I think he goes over the top a little bit for me, but if you're in the team with him and he's putting in the hits and he's throwing that big frame around, he's also another option for you at line-out. He gives that back row the best balance, I think, doesn't he? If you're thinking about Leinster long term, like, he's the guy, and if he's performing well, God, he's, they're pretty ferocious, that back row, really. If he's fit and playing well at 6.
Yeah, I think the last 2 weeks have not made me reevaluate him as a player, but he's shown a level, and he's kind of, shown certain attributes that I wouldn't have necessarily listed in the top 1 or 2 of what I usually see from him when it is the more eye-catching stuff that maybe he became known for, where he really reminded me of Courtney Laws over the last couple of weekends. Like, it's just that physicality, doing the work in the tight, very physical tackle, really good at line-out time. And I suppose, assuming, as Luke said, a kind of, not a leadership role, but kind of setting the tone, both with some of his, I suppose, G'ing up with other guys, but also how he's been playing. I think you can get away with referring to yourself in the third person if you play like this the last 2 weeks. I think that's what I'll say. Because he had a quote, was it 2 weeks ago, Cian, we were talking about it when he was like, has Ryan Baird had a good season? Who am I to say? Or something like that. I feel like he can get away with that when he's playing like this.
I think what we're seeing is Ryan Baird 2.0, because I still think he has those kind of big breaks in his locker, and you absolutely don't want to take that away from him. The problem was when he was making the big breaks, he didn't really seem to know what to do after it in terms of like making the running towards the support rather than running away from it. But he's been brilliant. I think he's benefited hugely, obviously, from playing back to back to back to back. I think it's 4, if not 5, 80-minute performances in a row. He's playing at 6. He's not shifting around to between the second row. And I was making this point with Rudd in our pod after the game on Saturday. if we just cast our eye forward a little bit, like he's going to be one of the main leaders on the Ireland tour. But from what I can see anyway, Dara Murray is the only out and out lock. So that means someone like Ryan Baird, Thomas Chukwu, who 3 guys who I still think are probably better at 6 rather than in the second row, are going to have to play a bit in the second row. But I would much rather see Ryan Baird now get a run at 6. Obviously, Peter O'Mahony's gone. There is going to be a vacancy there, and I think he's been exceptional. Yeah, I think it's more kind of the nuts and bolts, like you said, lads, around kind of the breakdown, the line out. When on the opposition ball at the line out, when he is thrown up at the front, he is a nightmare. His spring, he's so big, athletic, he's a nightmare to defend against. So the one thing I would add is that we have been here before with Ryan Baird, and he hasn't quite been able to kick on. There's been a few false dawns.
I think this is different.
Well, I hope it is. Yeah. I hope it is.
I think the way he's played the last couple of weeks is different to what we saw from him, where he was maybe not quite as explosive, maybe quote unquote, the last 2 weekends. It was more the kind of things you're referring to.
And he's, like I said,
but he's explosive in the right places.
Yeah,
though,
he is. I don't mean
kind of in the important stuff.
Like, I mean, maybe not as eye catching with the kind of the big kind of breaks and stuff like that.
But the big thing for him is always going to be that consistency, isn't it? Because like and that's what you kind of sometimes you just have to learn that as a kind of an explosive player, or a player that kind of has eye catching moments. Is that you probably want to be thinking more about the moments that you have, like more of the moments rather than the, so if you're thinking about like where you want to be making impacts, it's better for the team if you're probably doing your 80% of your involvements in the game, that you're getting, a 1% gain, rather than say on 5% of your moments in the game that you're getting a 50 or 60% win on someone. I'm not sure I'm explaining that unbelievably well, but I think it's better to be better in more of the game than have the kind of 1 or 2 moments. Now, you still need guys to have them, but do I want my 6 having them? Do I want my 6 to be that guy, or do I want my 6 to be brilliant at the line out, disrupting it there? Do I want him to get slow that ball down at nearly every breakdown he's in? Kind of that extra second. Do I want him getting an extra yard at each carry? I'm probably picking that guy rather than picking the guy who maybe, is making a few errors and is kind of maybe, he might make a 50-meter break, but I probably have James Lowe to do that for me. Or
I think you're spot on. I think you're spot on. And there's a reason there's like no second rows in the history of the game who make 50-meter breaks, because that's not what they're there for. That's not what they're needed for. There's already guys on the wing or in the centre who can do that. And obviously it's a benefit if a back row can do that, but I'm 100% with you on that one. I think it's the way he's played the last 2 weeks. I think in the long term will much more benefit Leinster, will much more benefit Ireland.
He had a tendency to have that big break in a game, and then for maybe 20-25 minutes you wouldn't really see much of him. So I totally understand and agree with the point that Luke has made. Those highlight moments are great and all, but if you're a Paul O'Connell, if you're a Leo Cullen, Jack Dienarber, Andy Farrell, they are looking at the nitty-gritty around the line out, around the breakdown. Are you doing the role of a 6? And I think just to touch on the Ireland Tour for a second, like you kind of touching it there, Will, that he's probably taken on a little bit more of a leadership role with Leinster over the last few weeks. Luke has mentioned him being an energiser. Again, I fully agree. I think that's a really good word to describe him. But when he goes into Ireland camp over the next couple of weeks in those 2 games against Georgia and Portugal, it's going to be a very different role for him, because he is going to be one of the more senior forwards at least. And I think it's a great opportunity for him to go in there, have a positive tour, and then come back at the start of next season, and suddenly we're looking at him being a genuine option to start at 6, which he has been, but he's just lacked the consistency to put it together.
That's the thing. Like, there's a vacancy at 6 for that game in Chicago. He is at the moment, I think, definitely the front runner there. So if he, it's on him now to nail that down come the start of the season, and it'll be interesting because he's probably going to be pressed into action early doors. He might be in South Africa for those first two matches. Like we were talking about how none of the Lions lads will be there. He will be tasked with going to South Africa. I think they're in Loftus First week 2. They're definitely playing the Stormers away week 1. It could be the Sharks. I don't recall the second fixture off the top of my head. But 2 big games, and I suspect he will be involved in those, given it's just a summer tour to Georgia and Portugal, and they'll need a couple of big bodies on deck. So that'll be a great opportunity for him at the start of next season to kind of remind people of what he's done over the last couple of weeks. Tommy O'Brien... Sorry?
Okay, yeah, I thought I was going somewhere else.
Fine.
Well, I thought Clarkson, did anyone else, what do you think of that? I mean, I think that's very encouraging, that performance. I mean, Jesus, when I think of Leinster, I'm thinking, God almighty, how are they going to do it next year? If Tyke Furlong can't get that calf ready, can't get that problem fixed, what happens at Leinster? I mean, Slimani, obviously, it looks he is staying, isn't he? So
yeah.
I think that is a little bit encouraging. But I don't know, is he the guy to bring it to the next level? I probably don't think so, just given where he is in his career. I thought Clarkson, lads, was brilliant the last 2 weekends. I thought he was so physical. There was one where I don't know who he pushes out of the way last week on the line. I think when he makes his carry, he just kind of shoves someone. I was like, Jesus.
The power for the try, the power for the try against Glasgow was like, he was like a one-man maul.
Is it Gibson? I don't know who, maybe it was Gibson Park or something, but he just kind of just reefs him out of the way. I'm taking control of this one. And I just thought, obviously the scrum, that was a serious challenge coming up against Wessels, and just even that those guys who were kind of in that back five and the weight that's coming in behind that Bulls front row at the scrum. God, I thought he was really good, and he was good around the park too. Look, you're not going to have your Tyke Furlong moments because he's just a bloody magician. At the height of his powers, you could make a case of him being the best rugby player in the world. But God, I just thought Clarkson was just business-like on the weekend against a really tough pack in wet conditions, so the weight really does tell even more there.
Yeah, and I wouldn't underestimate, obviously they ended up winning well and were kind of pulling away early on, but the early scrum success they had, I wouldn't underestimate how much that contributed to that early onslaught as well, and he was a key part of that.
The whole week would have been, so much of it would have centred around that first scrum for both teams, by the way, because the Bulls would have been licking their lips. A scrum after 2 minutes, let's drive them off the ball, lay down a marker. But for Leinster to rip up the script and for it to be on Tom Clarkson's side, I thought Porter was excellent as well. But just to stick on Clarkson, he's a really interesting case. He's 25 years old now, so he's not exactly like a new kid on the block in terms of 21, 22. When he was playing for the Ireland under-20s, they won a Grand Slam in 2019. I was over in Colwyn Bay when the glamorous Colwyn Bay, when they clinched the title. He scored a try at the end, pretty similar to the one that he scored against Glasgow in the semi-final. Now, he ended up playing 389 out of the 400 minutes for the Ireland under-20s in that campaign, that they had a success rate of 32 out of 32 scrums. And I don't think a lot got said about it, maybe because it's a little bit unglamorous, but he was outstanding for the Ireland under-20s. It's taken him a little bit of time, which is completely natural, particularly for a prop, to make the step up. And I think learning from someone like Rabah Slimani has been invaluable. This was something that I was asking Leo Cullen about after the match on Saturday, and he was saying, you've a guy like Slimani coming in, he scrummages in a very different way to what young Irish props would do in terms of being a nuggety French guy, and I think that has really stood to him as well. And I think now all of a sudden I just think I described it as a coming of age performance. It really sets Leinster, but it sets Ireland up as well. Again, going on the Ireland summer tour, Finlay Bealham is now called up by the Lions because Thomas Clarkson would have been playing back up to Bealham. Now all of a sudden Thomas Clarkson is going there as Ireland's first choice. The next time he's plays will be against Georgia and Tbilisi, which will be another huge test for him. But what a pep in his step for playing so well, because this is a real statement performance for him going forward, to have gone up against the Bulls and got to better them for the most part.
And I think as well, Cian, he's kind of well positioned. If you think about how good those two Leinster hookers and those two, and obviously, look, Cian Healy's obviously heading off, but he's going to be scrummaging against Porter. Boyle is obviously coming forth, but he's going to be scrummaging against Porter, Sheehan, and these kind of guys on a daily basis, or at least working on his technique there. So you'd have to think, he's feeling weight, he's feeling power in front of him, he's probably feeling really good technique, and obviously throw Kelleher in the mix as well, who's probably, I don't know if he's better than Sheehan or whatever, but he's a nice squatty shape as well. He's a little bit of a different shape, I think, to Sheehan. So I don't know. I think that guy could be really good. I know he's 25, but I think the point you made about that being a kind of a key age for props, I think it is. I think that's 25 is nearly like the 21 for a back.
Definitely,
totally. So you just have to get that weight in the bones, and you have to get used to feeling the power and all that kind of stuff. So he's one to watch, and he'll have good power behind him. He'll have McCarthy there behind him for quite a long period of time. Obviously, James Ryan's in 2-0, but he'll have good guys in behind him, I think. So excited to see where he goes, because I was a bit worried about that position, to be honest, guys.
Yeah, and it's timely because, as you say, Tyke Furlong's constantly being managed. It's hard to envisage Tyke Furlong going back to playing a huge amount of games every year. I feel like his career now might be just management around international windows and Champions Cup windows. It's a lot of rugby left to be played. Finlay Bealham is a year older than Tyke Furlong as well. It's always funny to look at the ages of the two lads, because you always just assume Furlong is 38 and Bealham is 30 just because of the way they broke through. But Bealham won the league with Connacht almost 10 years ago. It's not as if he has long period of time left at the top table. A few years for sure, but it's, as Luke said, it's good. It's a good time for Clarkson to make that emergence. It's funny you mentioned the 20s as well. Him and Baird were both that age group, and it's funny, like, they've had different trajectories, and there's other guys in that team like Craig Casey and various other people who've been around a while, and not everyone breaks through at the same time. Some of it, that, as you say, is position based.
Yeah, and a lot of those guys are the more glamorous positions, but I just thought it was worth highlighting how important Thomas Clarkson was to that very good crop of 20s. Like, to have 100% success rate on a scrum, which it was like he pretty much played every single minute of it. I know it's only under 20s level, but it was seriously impressive.
But the English packs and French packs are bigger than the Irish guys at that age. I think maybe they've caught up a little bit, but I always remember, because they come out of school a little bit earlier, and they're kind of generally the programs and the clubs. It's just a different kind of setup. So yeah, I think that's a really good point, Cian. I don't think we can underestimate that. I almost think it takes Ireland guys maybe a year or two extra to catch up physically sometimes,
Yeah, and he came through Wicklow RFC. He ended up going to Blackrock College and ended up playing the IL with Trinity, but he came through Wicklow RFC, which I think is another good reminder about casting the net.
All the greats are from Wicklow and Blackrock.
There you go.
Josh Van der Vliet. Unfortunately, Josh Van der Vliet didn't make it to Blackrock, the Hallowed Halls, but yeah,
I think it is
done very well despite that.
Yeah, I think it is important though to highlight that he came through. I know he went to Blackrock and he made his name for himself, but Wicklow did a great job at the underage ranks as well. So shout out to them.
Yeah, no, definitely someone will be watching keenly. See how he goes in the summer tour. As you say, Georgia, that's another good proving ground.
Great for him.
Yeah, and the rugby nerd in me really appreciates you just called up those under 20 stats. I presume they're written on your phone there.
I did a piece on Thomas Clarkson lately, and I did remember how good he was. So I went back and I
was like, how does he have that so at the top of your lock? Is that your lock screen on your phone? All these stats so you can just call upon.
How does it feel, Will?
Don't out me.
I've been outstatted. I'm seething with jealousy. Tommy O'Brien, Luke, is someone I'd be interested to get your opinion on. Thought he had another really good game. The conditions almost played to his strengths. Like, he had that savage clear out, to open up a hole for Jack Conan. He was so good in the air as well. He's really good in the air. He won back a couple of key balls early on as well when the game was in the melting pot. Just another really impressive outing from him. He's gone to being, I know, like, he's not the star name of some other players, but like, come the end of the season, he was one of the form guys in that team for me.
God, I think he is a bit of a star. He's like the young star for me. Like, I think, like, all the chat is Prendergast, but really, like, you could see he still has another year or two, I think, to really establish himself, in my opinion. But O'Brien is the finished article. Like, the key bit for him now is, can he stay fit? Like, he's so physical. His technique is excellent. I really love that in the contact. Like, I do sometimes wish he would take a bit like Ringrose, that maybe doesn't go as full on into things. I think he could still have massive impacts going like 95% in, rather than like he properly goes 100 into things. So there'll be injuries in his future, I think, but I have to say, I just love watching him play. He's a supporter's dream, isn't he? Like, he's a guy you can just get behind. He's just flying into everything. He's all action, a bit like Baird in many ways, like super athlete. You could see that, like, he easily could have taken that hack through or whatever. Well, I know you don't agree with that, Cian, but that hack through, I easily felt like he could have burned Barrett to get that one in. Like, he's so quick. Nice. He's got nice agility as well. He's got good kind of lateral movement. I see him in that Irish team, guys. I have to say, I think I know Mac Hansen is a quality operator, and maybe he might have the edge skill wise, but I don't think you can. I think you have to pick O'Brien on form at the moment, guys. If you were picking an Irish team,
he really reminds me of a Joe Schmidt winger. I don't mean that in a bad way in any way. I just feel like the qualities he brings. I feel like.
We should point out though,
rooking, you get you a turnover. Like, he's great in the air. He's just and he feel like he never switches off. Do you know that kind of way? He's one. I think that's actually a really good way of describing him. Will he's always switched on. You see him looking for quick taps. You see him looking for quick throw-ins. He's always like this at African wingers, switched on for opportunities. And then you can see as well, he does have that little bit of flair as well, where. You think of the Cian try. I think it was, God, who was the weird crossfield kick? Was it Glasgow, guys?
Ulster. It was Ulster.
Ulster, excuse me. Sorry. When he makes the break, he kind of gets clipped, and then he manages to get through, and he just, all at the corner of his eye, sees this mad kind of chip in the corner. Like I don't think we can underestimate how instinctive that was.
It's good to have.
He's a brilliant player, guys. I love watching him.
And it's good for a different option. Like you have Mac Hansen, who's one style of say right wing, and you have Tommy Bryan, who's a very different style. But it's good to have that kind of different, option to wherever you want to play.
Yeah, for sure. And I was laughing like Luke saying, kind of young guy, and I think it was Ryan Wilson was grabbing him on the TV after the match. Said, "Oh, like the young guys." He said, "Well, I did just turn 27. Like he's not.
Sorry, is he 27?
Yeah, he was the age grade ahead of the lads. He was 28. He was the captain of the 20s in 2018.
So he has just been dogged by injuries for the last few years. Like this guy again, a bit like Tom Clarkson, except he's 3 years older. He's not a new kid on the block in terms of his age. So it's a very important period for him. And I think both your points about sort of his style of play is fascinating, because I think it'll be really interesting to see, not so much on the summer tour, but in November, fingers crossed, he can stay fit, how he fits into Andy Farrell's attacking system in terms of being that playmaker. Because I don't know if we've seen a whole pile of that from him. Maybe he's not being asked to do that in the Leinster system. It doesn't look like he is, but I think if he's going to play for Ireland, he maybe needs to have a little bit more ball playing. And if he can bring that with everything, because I totally agree, I think he's a smashing player. If he can marry the two, then wow, you're looking at a potentially complete winger. So the summer tour, I think, would be really important to get that elusive cap. I mean, like I said, he's 27 years old. He's finally going to win what has felt like a cap that's been a long time coming. So it's a big few months, I think, for him as well.
And do you know what I like about it, Cian, as well, just to tie in with that point, because I think we're making the Irish point. It is funny. We'd be kind of worried a little bit, haven't we, about having those kind of out-and-out finishers in Ireland. Like, he looks like an out-and-out finisher to me. I like the look of Kilgallen, guys. I think if he can tidy up parts of his game, he's got that top-end pace. He looks like he's aggressive. And I think Nash as well. I mean, I know he's had a few injuries at kind of key parts as well, but I don't think we're as actually in bad shape there. Nash obviously has that little bit more experience internationally than the two guys. Certainly played in bigger games anyway. I think we're actually in decent shape all of a sudden. You know, that kind of way. I think we were panicking a little bit. Now, I know Lowe plays a key part and he's got that bulk and, he breaks a tackle that maybe some of the other guys can't. But I don't know. I'm actually feeling a bit better about where Ireland are kind of sitting in terms of the resources. And I'm hoping that a few of these guys kind of kick on to the next level. And I think, like, even for the likes of Osborne to not get selected at 15, I thought Jimmy O'Brien, guys, had a really, really solid outing at fullback, positioned himself very, very well. He's a brave guy, obviously, but I mean, that was a bit telling as well, because that's a very close call. So obviously he's training well, because, I think a lot of people probably would have had Osborne in that place, but maybe because of the versatility, he sits on the bench for you. But that was an interesting call, I think, that probably we didn't make much about. But I think it's because, look, Jimmy O'Brien's been very good and very solid. But all of a sudden you're kind of going, if Hugo Keenan goes down, there is options there. There's guys who have played well. I mean, we saw what Osborne did, but Jimmy O'Brien was very good in the weekend as well. So yeah, it's good. I think it's funny the change of perception at the end of the season now, compared to, say, the way Munster finished the season. Obviously close enough there, but they kind of went out at that stage and didn't really qualify that comprehensively. We worried about Leinster in the Heineken Cup. We obviously, things in Ulster, still not great. Connacht now, it's funny. Lancaster comes in. The way Leinster finished the season, I think there's loads to be optimistic about, and I think Munster as well have a few guys that I'm thinking, yeah, actually, I like the look of it. So maybe it's funny how quickly your perceptions change from just one or two big wins, isn't it?
Wouldn't completely go away from the Northampton game just yet, but I take your point. It's certainly more positive today overall, the outlook in Irish rugby, than it was when I was wearing a party shirt in like Italy and I was logging in on my holidays.
Feeling like a clown.
Yeah. Cian, just one or two Leinster things I want to touch on still, but the Bulls, the Bulls were absolutely shocking. Like, as much as Leinster were physical and managed the conditions better, I just thought the Bulls, they're actually like. I was at the match with a friend and we were just laughing because Willie LaRue kept making shocking mistakes and then turning to the nearest teammate and just effing them out of it. I was like, Willie, hold on a second, you're having an absolute stinker here. You need to look at your own game. But he kind of summed up the day for the Bulls. The key guy that we had highlighted in advance, who had torn Leinster apart with his kicking game last year, just couldn't get going. He had that really poorly executed cross kick. He saw Prendergast and Caden Moody lined up and he just right into Prendergast breadbasket, threw that forward pass right on half time. And then there's generally his teammates, they could not get a hold of the conditions at all. And then that period when they were kind of in the line, they were so one-dimensional. They didn't make Leinster think that much on their feet. Leinster had to front up physically, but they didn't make Leinster think. Considering what Northampton did to piece the defence apart, albeit on a drier day, where Leinster needed to definitely have their wits about them more than the Bulls. They just need to front up kind of more on Saturday.
They looked really sluggish and a bit leggy, a little bit old, dare I say. I mean, you look at their background, they brought back in Marco van Staden. Now, I know they're missing a couple of starters.
Hanekom would be big.
Hanekom and Elric Lowe as well would have made a big difference.
Your pal, of course.
Our pal, yeah. But I thought like Marco van Staden, Marcel Coetzee, they just didn't really offer enough punch. And once Leinster were able, and Luke made a great point earlier about the rain, I think that really suited Leinster in terms of the defensive system, which was outstanding. They made the Bulls look very ordinary, but stuff like the manner of Jack Conan's try and Josh van der Vlier's try, how soft they were from a Bulls perspective, really well worked by Leinster. Tommy O'Brien's clear out, outstanding. But like, if you're the Bulls, if I put Bulls hat on for a second, like,
you pride yourself on that. Like, for a winger, now he's a very physical winger, but the winger to go in and just like blow that ruck apart.
Very, very, very soft, I thought. And this is like, the Bulls and the South Africans are probably having similar conversations that we have had about Leinster, because they just haven't been able to get over the line in the last few years. And I thought Jake White's, press conference was really trying to control the narrative and saying like, well, we're playing against a supernatural team, all this kind of stuff. But it was a master in sort of deflecting from his own and I guess his own players' deficiencies, because if that's as good as they can produce in a final, now I know they had the travel and all that, but they came early in the week and they seemed like they were really confident. I thought Jack Conan summed it up brilliantly when he said that we heard them in the media, and it's great, by the way, to hear that they do actually listen to the podcast, the players, and read our articles, that they block out all the noise apparently, so it somehow seeped in, but that they said we're expected to play against Ireland, and well, we're going to bring an Irish type performance.
Not disappointing.
Not disappointing.
Like, funny,
great, that was a great line, and I'd say that fed into their mantra as well. But if you're a Bulls supporter, I think you would be bitterly disappointed that was a final performance that your side produced. Bitterly disappointed.
Yeah, and I would have liked to have heard Jake White be a little more honest about his own side's performance as well. Like Leinster do have 15 internationals. They do have Snyman and Barrett. Like, that's not what he's saying isn't untrue, but they were so abject and failed to deliver anything that it sounded a little just churlish.
Absolutely, and like, fair enough, they have loads of internationals, but the majority of them are homegrown produced talents. We just mentioned Thomas Clarkson coming through a place like Wicklow URC, so it's really disingenuous. Of course they have the two superstars in Jordie Barrett, who was outstanding, Orgy Snyman to come off the bench, Rabat Slimani, but the rest of the guys, Robbie Henshaw's side, he wasn't playing, are homegrown talents, so it's a bit disingenuous, I think, as well. South Africa, we always speak about the player depth that they have, the level of talent, the level of athletes that they have. So I think, behind the scenes, again, if you were a Bull supporter, you'd be hoping that your head coach is maybe taking a little bit more responsibility about figuring out the reasons why his team were so poor.
He's also playing a game, and he referred to it himself. He's probably trying to put pressure on the Bulls paymasters to open the check. But like, Andre Pollard is coming in next year. Like, he is a marquee signing. Like, so they'll have him coming back in. Slowly but surely, the South African franchise, to be fair, are attracting their guys back in from around the world, and then the province, or the South African teams are getting stronger as a result. Luke, anything on the Bulls you want to add? Like, as I said, they were just. I was going into this game now. The rain did change things a bit, but I was expecting it to be, at least for a period, like this really feisty, competitive game, like what we saw in Loftus Versfeld last year, where even though the Bulls were probably a good bit better, the game on the scoreboard was still very close and still very competitive. Whereas the game was kind of done and dusted after 20 minutes. Like, I know you were saying there was hairy moments and Leinster stood up, but in reality, like, you can't spot a team a 19-0 lead. Like, even La Rochelle was only 17, so a 19-0 lead, and expect to come back. Like, what? So, were you how disappointed were you with the Bulls' effort?
I don't know. I felt they did feel flat. That's what it did feel like. I think, and they didn't help themselves. I mean, Leinster clearly won the kicking battle, and that was something that we felt like, might be a bit more hotly contested. I thought they were a bit flippant with the ball at kind of key moments. I didn't think they threw some bad passes. You mentioned the kicks, the cross. That cross-field kick was particularly poor from Willie LaRue, I thought.
Try on there if he had got it good, like.
Oh, big time. Yeah.
James Lowe should have caught it. He should have caught it.
Oh, that one as well. Jeez, I wasn't even talking about that.
James Lowe should have caught that, and that would have been.
That would have been it. Oh.
Curtains, yeah. So like it's a funny one. Like he is kind of a key guy for this team. He sets the tempo. You think he'd have his hands on the ball kind of a good bit more than he probably did. And the moments that he did have, he had a very poor game. I agree with you. And there was a lot of kind of like pushing the responsibility towards other people. Now there was some pretty shoddy play around him. I will agree. I kind of could see the frustration on his side of things. You know, you think of that long pass in on the 22. I'm not sure who throws it to him. Now, he should see that coming short and kind of move to it. But at the same time, it was a pretty sloppy pass to him. But he kind of goes mad. You only the one he lashes into touch. So he had those kind of moments where we're kind of petulant. And he's a leader in that team. So that wasn't great. I thought some of the interpretation at scrum time, I thought they might have had some legitimate cases there just based on my little bit of understanding. And even the ones that they were getting in their own favour, I wasn't sure on the interpretation there, to be honest with you. Always looks like there's something going on the other side that you can have a fairly good argument against. So scrum it's just such a tricky area, but that was an area where, like, when I saw the rain coming in, like I was speaking to my dad that morning, I was saying, "Oh God, the rain's in!" Like, and I really felt like it wasn't going to be just with the pack that I just thought the Bulls would be bringing over. I was like, this really kind of plays to their kind of kicking game and to their kind of heavy pack. And I thought Leinster might struggle in those conditions, but on reflection, it kind of really works. It really worked well for Leinster, didn't it? So yeah, look, I look the last point on the Bulls. Look, yeah, disappointing. I didn't think the referee helped them a lot. But at the end of the day, they have to take responsibility. And Jake White's argument's ridiculous because the key point, like Leinster, yes, have they brought in those kind of three big stars, but nearly everyone else across the 50 that they have or 40 that they have throughout the season, wherever it is in that range. They're all homegrown. So, like, yes, you have to keep them with the international money, but, they've developed all these guys from scratch. So I didn't hold any weight to that. And I completely agree with Cian's point. Like, if you're a South African coach, like, you're picking from a way bigger population. That's like 4 times as big over there, isn't it? They're about 40 million people, maybe a bit more in South Africa. They have some unbelievable, they've got a lovely blend of kind of, of athletes there that really suit rugby as well. So, I think that's a bit of a cop-out for him to be saying that. I think they've got way better resources. Yes, not financially, but certainly from a player resources point of view, they've way more depth. So, look, maybe it's just a guy who might be under pressure. That's maybe what I'm thinking.
Yeah, as I said, I think he was flying a kite to get like maybe another signing or two, bring back one of the other South African guys. So there's so many good players in Japan that play for the Springboks. I'm sure he'd love to have a couple of more of those guys back in situ in country. Cian, I suppose it's fair to say that over the 3 knockout games, Leinster kind of ramped it up week on week and it gave their most emphatic performance for last. And again, like, not of all the lessons Leinster have learned in this period of no trophies, picking your best team has to be tattooed on Leo Cullen's forehead, or like a memento or something like that. So whenever he looks in the mirror, he'll remember. When he's about to put Jordie Barrett on the bench, he'll see it on his forehead. Oh no, wait, I meant to pick my best team in a knockout game. Like, so 10 guys started off 5 games. Of the 4 who didn't, 4 guys had injuries, like so Gibson Park, Ringrose, Tommy O'Brien and Van der Fleer all missed one because they were injured. The only guy then is Dan Sheehan, who he did put on the bench against the Scarlets and then came off the bench and had a great performance. And you're thinking, Leo, let's not go down this road again. But it's so simplistic, and it's not as if I know the best team and Leo Cullen doesn't. That's not what I'm saying. But there's some obvious team selections he's made, as we all know over the years, that have put Leinster with one hand or both hands tied behind their back and has directly contributed them not winning trophies. So I just feel like if nothing else changes, if he just goes in and puts his best foot forward and actually just picks the strongest team, the consensus strongest team, like,
you're giving yourself the best possible opportunity, which is half the battle in many ways. Like, and I'm so glad. I assume it's an admission between the coaches that it just wasn't working, but this Andrew Porter on the bench rubbish, in my mind as well, was done away with for the knockout run in the URC, which I was glad of. He obviously went 71 or 72 minutes from the start the other day, and I know we gave Thomas Clarkson a lot of praise there, but Andrew Porter was exceptional against Wilco Lowe, one of the best tight heads in the URC, an absolute man mountain. I thought he was brilliant, as he is all the time. But yeah, I mean, just look at how well Jordie Barrett has played over the last couple of weeks. And look, this is stating the bleeding obvious. He has been such a brilliant signing for Leinster. It's something I was writing about on Saturday, the day of the game, that I'm really glad for him that he has a medal to show for the 7 months that he spent in Dublin, because if you're ranking like the Leinster greats, you have like Isa, obviously Brad Thorne, Nathan Hines, these kind of guys who contributed, but they all won Heineken Cups, Champions Cups, and that was obviously the primary reason why Jordie Barrett was brought over. I mean, he gave it his all and he was left on the bench at the critical time. There's no need to go over old ground. It was a really poor mistake. But I was glad from his point of view, from Leinster's point of view, in terms of like a return on investment, because I think they will feel the positive effects of Jordie Barrett long after he's gone in terms of the work that he's done with the younger players. But to have something tangible to show, I think, was really important as well. And it was interesting afterwards in his TV interview, he kind of left the door open to potentially come back, I presume, after the 27 World Cup. So he's been a brilliant signing, and from a media kind of point of view, it's been a joy to watch him live. Just an exceptionally good player who has a lovely volley of the ball, not quite a hack, but he's been great to watch. He's been great to watch, Luke, hasn't he?
I love watching him. He's a real he this is going to sound like a really boring description of him, but he's like, you could see he's a top class international player. Mm-hmm. Like, he does everything really, really well. We talked about O'Brien, and I think he does lots of things that an international player does. So Jordie Barrett does all those things all the time. He every single game, every opportunity he gets, he rarely drops the ball. His body height into contact, because he's a tall guy, is always good. He's always looking punchy in there. He's driving the legs, getting the extra bit of extra yard or two. He obviously has the beautiful ball playing ability. He's got the kicking game, and he's a great tackler. Like, I thought it would be great for someone like I think Prendergast. I'm hoping that he learned a little bit from how, what Barrett has done with his body, because he is kind of a similar shape to him. Now, I think he's a better athlete in terms of he's a bit quicker and everything like that, but not by that much. And there's still a chance for Prendergast to really improve himself physically. And if you look, I've seen, weirdly, it's going to sound like a weird comment, but I've seen Barrett in the pool in Riverview. He's a skinny guy. No, I know it sounds like a weird thing to say, right?
But I'm having a bad mental image now.
Yeah, no, but he was walking by the edge of the pool, and I was with the kids now, but I just was like, you could see him stripped down. Like, he's not a huge guy. Like, Prendergast isn't a huge guy, but he's he's a tall guy, he's skinny, but he's made the best of himself physically. And you could see how he throws himself into contact. He's so aggressive in there. For a guy who's a playmaker and has to be thinking his way around the pitch, which is what Prendergast has to do. What I was hoping was that you talked about him kind of influencing the younger guys. I think hopefully having Barrett next to him, who's a similar body shape to him, he goes, well, I can do that. I might not get exactly there, but I can get close to that. And I can throw myself into things, and I can still be as effective, as a thinker on the pitch. So it sounds like a weird way to go with that, but that was one of my hopes, that maybe I thought, a young Prendergast, he might leave a really big impression on him there. And then just how tidy he is for everyone else, and how effective that can be for a team when you do the basics just brilliantly well all the time. He was a joy to watch. I agree. I loved watching him.
He's like a perfect mixture of his brothers, Bowden and Scott. He's got Bowden's skills. I know Bowden is more skillful, but he's got that kind of subtlety to his game. He's a big unit, as Luke has said, from seeing him in the pool. But he's also, which is something that we obviously don't see, but he probably reminds me, from what I've heard, of maybe like a Johnny Sexton, an on-field coach, because Luke McGrath was speaking about this afterwards. That little left-footed grubber kick that Jordie Barrett put through in the opening minute, which forced a knock-on that Leinster got the scrum penalty from. Luke McGrath was explaining that wasn't like a analysis thing that the coaches had done. Jordie Barrett came up to him after he put that kick through, and he said, "There's kick space in behind here, watch for when I give you the signal." And then Luke McGrath, beautiful little short box kick over the top for Jordie Barrett's try. So to see, and Luke, you know this obviously much better than I would, but I would say that is what separates the good players from the elite players, in terms of being able to see things as they're happening 90 miles an hour on a pitch, and then to pull it off and have your teammates sing off the same hymn sheet. I thought that was a mark of a top class player.
Yeah, the best guys feed you great information, and that was always a big responsibility for your kind of wide players. So guys in the centre and guys in the wing, guys at fullback often have a brilliant picture of where everyone is at the pitch. They've got the most time to kind of see. So yeah, it's a mark of a great player. To me, that is a basic. As in, you talk about the kind of fundamentals of the game, feeding in information to your 10s and your 9s and all the guys who have to make decisions with the ball and get the ball to the right places to punish the opposition. I think that is a mark of a top-class international. I go back to, I know it sounds like a real basic way of describing a guy, but really good players, in my experience, your Drickos, your Darces, your all these guys, they were always, you don't have to be shouting all the time, but they just feed in those kind of little bits of information. Like, listen, I think there's crossfield kick space here. I think there's a grubber in behind. I think, I think if we can put this guy in this position, give me the one-on-one. I think I have him. It sounds like real basic information, but when you're in the heat of pressure, sometimes you just need someone to say, someone just to give you information, just to give you a little bit of confidence to do it. And I always remember, say on the flip side of that, right, the Luke McGrath moment, Johnny Sexton, Ronan O'Gara, I always remember, if you gave them information, they were going to do it. And I think there's confidence in that too. Do you know that kind of way? They had to trust the message. They trust the guy who's giving them the messages. And it sounds like a weird thing to say, but you got to be brave to trust people. And I think that's a great show of it. That's a real experienced guy. Yes, trusting the information, but also delivering on the skill and actually just going ahead and doing it. So yeah, there's praise on both sides there, because if you think about how Luke McGrath kicks that, he kicks it kind of over his shoulder, kind of blind. He doesn't do it with the left foot, if you know what I mean. So he has to kick it almost back over himself. So that takes a lot of trust in the guy who's giving you the information. So yeah, just really experienced, really good players doing it consistently. So, and that's what you get. That's the results, isn't it?
Yeah, from the moment he came off the bench against Bristol until his last game at the weekend, his performance rarely dropped below an 8 or an 8.5, I'd say. So, how will this season be remembered from a Leinster perspective? Was it a success overall?
I think relatively, yeah. I know the Champions Cup is the pinnacle, but Leinster went through an entire URC season by using 50-odd players, whatever it was, only losing 2 games. I mean, that win that they had over the Sharks in Durban a couple of months ago really stands out to me as well. Outstanding. So I don't think, if you end up being league champions, and you touched on it, Will, Leinster had never won this since the big 4 South African teams had come in. I think if you win a league that's that long, that much of a slog, that you use so many players, I think it has to be deemed a relative success in the overall scheme of things. Relative,
though, I feel like
because Leinster, I
feel like that's really doing a lot of lifting in the sentence, though.
What do you think, Will?
Can I just add just one small point, just to what I mean about that? We judge Leinster by the Champions Cup because they do that themselves. So, like, if we're saying that outwardly, you can guarantee that inside the 4 walls of their camp, they're saying it, and if not more. Like, go back to Andrew Porter's comment about the stars in the jersey. Leinster have described winning the 5th star as an obsession, and that's absolutely fine, but it shouldn't detract from how much of a success, to use your word, it is to win the league. That's your bread and butter. So I know you have a stronger view, Will, but I think we need to start respecting and appreciating the URC more.
No, it's a very binary question, and I pretty much threw it out.
Thanks for giving it to me.
Yeah, I was going to say, I threw it out to see what someone might say. Because 2 things can be true at once. Like, as you say, relative success. Like, winning the URC, they never won it. It is a good league with strong teams in it now. But no, the team they have and the nature of their Champions Cup defeat, I wouldn't define it as a success purely because it was such a within their control defeat, and there was so many facets to the failure against Northampton that I still think that's going to be my takeaway from the year when I look back on it next season or in years to come. Like, and Leo Cullen talking about learning lessons going forward from it. Where's a little tin, because we've been here so many times now. This Northampton game was particularly acute for some of the things that went wrong that day, but nor do I think it's a huge failure because they won the league. But ultimately, I judge them by the Champions Cup. For sure.
I know this is real ifs, buts and maybes, but just bear with me for a sec. If Leinster had beaten Northampton and lost to Bordeaux in the final, in a close enough tight game, would you still be saying the same thing, or is it?
No, I would be like, that was a good season.
Okay.
A decent season. Depending on how the final played out.
Even though Bordeaux had never won anything.
Well, no, because similar to, say, the way they lost to Toulouse last year, like, I don't think we came on and hammered them and said, they are choked. Like, it was a good game and they lost. And there were things we criticised them for on the day, for sure. Like, we didn't like their team selection. There was certain elements of the performance we thought they could have got better. But then they went and then they got kind of beaten well by the Bulls, and then the season becomes, quite a disappointment one. Whereas I feel like if they got into a final, it was just the nature of that Northampton defeat was so galling that it.
And sorry, we have to caveat as well. Like the year before they got came because the team they selected against Munster, and then they go out and kind of blow up in the final. Like I haven't had that big lead, so like there is context to maybe being a bit harsher on them here. For what it's worth, I know you didn't ask me, but I do think I think that's a kind of, for me, that's probably the baseline for this Leinster team. I think you've got to win some trophy. I can't really go back on my views now and say it's not important to win the league. It's so important to win the league. I think, you put in all the hard work all year. Like, I just think the way they've gone about the last 3 rounds, it's kind of been forced on them. Picking their best team every week. Like, I just think, that's the blueprint for the future. You can't be messing around with knockout games. And I think, to me, it's like it's an average season. I know that sounds very harsh, but I think they need to be like, a great season is winning the two of them. I think a good season is probably that place in the middle where, they get to the final of a Heineken Cup and they win the league, or vice versa. Whatever way it is, I think that's a good season. But I think like the great season for me is winning the double with this team. They've got a great squad. You mentioned 50 players in the league. It's because they've got 50 good players as well, though. That kind of way. And I think when you think about the resources, like, yes, Jake, I don't agree with Jake White and maybe the tone of it and the timing of it, but I think that might have been something else. He does have a point about the resources that Leinster have and the quality of the coaching staff, the quality of the extra signings they brought in to bolster the squad this year. To me, a great season was winning 2, good season, final, and a win in one of them. This is an okay season for me, just given the level of quality that they have from coaching staff all the way down to academy.
Yeah, and
any agreement on that?
I think that's a fair summation. Like, in fairness, like, we've been doing this for about 55 minutes. I think the first 45 we rightly focused on the positives from Saturday and the performances of some guys and the potential some key guys have. But if we're just assessing it now at the end of the show in the round, I think it's fair. I think Luke's is kind of where I'm sitting. And you're probably maybe slightly on the more positive side. Yeah,
slightly. I'm not saying this is a great success. They lost to Northampton and messed up their team by any means. I just think winning this league is different to winning the Pro 12, the Rabo Direct, like it was back in the day. I think it's a much harder league to win, and the amount of good work that Leinster have done over the course of a long season by using so many players. I go back to that win in Durban was incredible. They finished top seeds. That gave them the home advantage. Like, that is a success in terms of the URC, but I understand the points that you're making.
Is it harder to win it? Like, the Welsh teams have completely capitulated. Like, Munster probably not the force they were. I'm just trying to think back.
But Leinster hadn't won it.
Ulster were definitely a very strong team then. I don't know.
Leinster hadn't won it in the last 4 years, and I know, like, they messed up their team selection in the semi-final against Munster, but they had not won the URC in its current iteration, which, with all the luxuries that they have in terms of budget and all that, I think that to me says a lot too.
I think it's harder to win than it was when Leinster won 4 in a row 4 years ago. I think Luke's point, are you going back to when you were playing with Joe Schmidt and that was an era where other teams were quite strong.
We don't win it again till 2012, was it again?
2013.
2013, yeah. Like, I don't know. Yeah, I just felt like there was a lot of, like, the Welsh teams are just, like, they were very strong. When you think about those Ospreys teams, some of those Scarlets teams were very strong. Munster and Ulster were very different outfits, I think, at that stage. So, I don't know. I feel like maybe we're being a bit harsh. Glasgow were very strong. Glasgow had some serious players back then as well. So
they're league champions at the moment as well, though.
Yeah, I don't know. I just feel like maybe you're... No, I don't
like Joe Schmidt never won a double.
Onto my medal holder at all.
Sorry, apologies.
I was gonna do some Lions talk, but I feel like we've hit a good hour now. We'll have plenty of time to chat Lions in the coming weeks. Argentina up on Friday in the Aviva Stadium. It'll be interesting to see how many Irish players are involved. I think, you'd expect maybe Ty Byrne, Bundy Aki potentially. They've been with the squad. Finlay beat them as well. The Leinster guys less certain who might be involved, if any. Johnny Sexton was.
There's a few of them, maybe potentially.
A few Lazarus-like recoveries potentially for this weekend.
Apparently, yeah. I actually heard that as well. I was on a call yesterday with some of the Lions staff. I'm actually on the pitch for the Lions on. Not togging out again, sadly, but in a kind of commentary type capacity. But watch out for the half time. I have to put up a high ball for someone, so hope I don't slip my arse. I'm picturing a Rory McIlroy-esque moment for me again. There's
Luke
giving thing that I've got to kick a high ball at.
Having spent much of the pod discussing Leinster's kicking game, we will be critiquing you here next week on your half-time up and under.
Imagine how many of those players are just gagging for me to make a show of myself.
One of the good perks, it's good that you're getting a few Lions nixers now. One of the perks of being a former Lion, you can get called into the fray for things like this.
Mm-hmm.
That's correct, and rightly so, Will.
And exactly, rightly so.
Chalk it down.
Yeah, well, we'll all be at the Aviva then this Friday. I'll actually be doing a post-match pod with the lads, so watch out for that in your feeds. Until then, I'd like to thank Luke and Cian for joining me and all you for listening at home. Thanks so much and goodbye.